So here's something I've noticed about high-performing leaders. The very thing that got them to where they are is often the same thing that's keeping them from where they want to go. I call it a pattern of saboteur thinking. Others might call it something else, but my language is it can feel like a saboteur is running the show. However, let's offer a gentler reframe because these aren't character flaws. They're actually guardians. So think about it as inner patterns that have developed because they worked and they worked really well until they're not working, right? And it's kind of like a muscle that gets overused. When that happens, that muscle can become a sort of a liability. It becomes, in some ways, weaker. And for high performing leaders, that most overused muscle is usually the one that has all the answers. Right? So think about it. Leaders get rewarded for delivering. They get rewarded for being the subject matter expert, for solving the problem in the room. And that's how they rose to the positions where they're at right now. But at some point, the leadership journey requires something very different. It requires releasing the attachment to knowing and learning to work through people and with people. And that becomes a complete and total paradigm shift for so many people, right? Because what this looks like in practice is what I tend to refer to as catalytic leadership. Instead of answering every question, you begin to quite possibly, answer the question with a question. But here's the catch. You're doing so in service of helping the people around you think things through from a different angle. And here's what's interesting. That approach doesn't diminish the leader's insight. It actually expands it because now you're seeing the situation from every angle in the room and not just your own. But then here's a challenge with that as well. Most high-performing leaders don't have a space to explore any of this. Their days are filled with meetings and goals and problems to solve, right? There's no room to think generatively. There's no room, or feels like there's no room, to really revisit the beliefs and patterns they carry without even realizing it. That's what coaching provides. So it's not about finding a coach or working with a coach to get advice or to get answers. Working with a coach is because you want to create this container to think things through more clearly. It becomes a respite where you can finally access all the thoughts you've been holding, but never had the space to examine. And that examination is where the invisible ceiling begins to lift. So here's a question I'm going to invite you to sit with this week. Which strength am I overusing that's limiting what's possible? Not where you're weak, but rather where am I strong, so strong that I've stopped being curious? Because that's where the ceiling lives, and that's where the real work begins.